Wow, Liz, I'm glad it's Andy Burnham has to follow that rather than me. Andy, of course, Labour's candidate for the Metro Mayor in Greater Manchester. He is the Shadow Home Affairs Secretary, and as we meet in Liverpool, it was wrong for me not to mention that when he was a cabinet minister, he did threaten to resign, and he got the Hillsborough inquiry, so the 96.
Thanks everybody. I don't know how I do follow that, Liz. That was absolutely incredible and a privilege to listen to you. But I'll start with something that Ross said. And it's aimed at you really, Kevin. She said we've been a bit battered and bruised, and that's right. That's probably how we all feel. And I've just come from the annual Press versus Labour game, and we were 3-0 down at half-time. So, you know, added to the feeling. But I've got news for you. We came back in the second half. We drew 3-3. But there's a little bit more as well. We beat them on penalties. Kevin, your boys took a hell of a beating, and hopefully, in there's a metaphor for the Labour Party, isn't there? Because the fight back does have to start, doesn't it? When you hear what we've just heard, it's unforgivable to have people not doing their job, focusing on what we should be focusing on, taking the fight to a Tory government that is really inflicting great misery on so many people, and that's where our focus has got to be now. And I want to talk to you about the fight back today, but just before I do, I want to say we've been here before, haven't we? We've been actually in very similar circumstances before. A Prime Minister enters Downing Street preaching pious words on the steps about how she will heal the divides and bring people together. And this time, literally within days, she wasn't healing the divides, she was opening them up. Within days, grammar schools, bringing selection back in our schools. What will that do to a city like this, to the northwest? That will just will rob so many young people of their opportunity, label them as second class at age 11. That's what happened to my dad growing up in this city. He went to a secondary modern here. He told me, never, ever, ever accept it for anybody. And that is why I will fight selection in our schools with everything that I've got. She's not wasted any time. She's already saying that all those promises that they made to the north, the northern powerhouse, that's all. Forget that. You know, that was Osborne, and you know this is now. And she's increasingly talking about a hard Brexit. Now we know what that means, don't we? We know that the most poorest parts of the country would be hit the most hardest by a hard Brexit, and that's why the fight back has to start now. And as I say, if our focus were to stay internal with all of this going on, then that would be unforgivable. The Tories are taking liberties. You know, would this grammar schools initiative be coming through if we were as we have been? I'm not sure. They are trying to push things and take liberties, and that's why we've got to wake up to it. And what I would say is, while we have been there before, in some ways it's even harder now than it was in the 1980s. And I'm thinking particularly of the modern phenomenon of Twitter. And I want to put to you a radical and new thought today, which I put to all of my colleagues in Parliament. It's a real novel thought. How about from now on, we use Twitter to attack the Tories? Probably a new idea, but maybe, just maybe, it's got something in it. You know, I had a thought actually when I was just thinking about this. Can you imagine if Twitter was around in 1980s Liverpool? Oh my goodness, I was beginning to think what would have happened if that would have been the case. Thank God it wasn't, but it is now, and I kind of feel that people, rather than just thinking things, they're typing it against people in our party, and then people respond to it, and then someone else responds to it, and then that goes. And what does that mean? We just become consumed by these pointless, petty, childish sometimes, internal arguments where nobody wins, nobody feels better. And what does it achieve? What does it achieve for the people that we've just been hearing about, who are being hit hardest by this government? Nothing at all. Absolutely nothing. That's why I said yesterday, everybody needs to take a look at themselves now. and move forward, turn the page and start attacking the Tories and holding them to account. Surely that's what has got to happen now. And I have to say as well, though, I kind of said something there about how MPs should move forward from here. But it is also the case that if there's talk of deselection around, I have to say this, that does the same, you know. That pulls the rug from under people who are trying to represent people who are suffering at the hands of this government. It turns everything internal, and it doesn't help. It doesn't help us attack the Tories, because the energy goes internal again, and it goes negative. And that isn't helping the people who put us into Parliament or the people who voted Labour. And so we all have to think about what we do, all of us now, everybody in this room, everybody in this party has to think about how we go forward from here, and how we do the job that we were asked to do by the British public, which is to hold this government to account. That is what we should be doing, day in, day out, not having pointless arguments on Twitter. And I just want to say two things then about that fight back and why it's so important. It's because that Brexit argument is here now, it's happening. And the Tories are already kind of giving all of these hints that yes, they want to leave the single market, and yes, they're going to have some very tough rules in terms of immigration, a points-based system. Well, that's way too soft for the new Prime Minister. So they are developing hardline right-wing plans in Downing Street. And as I said before, they will hit Labour communities the hardest. And that's why we have got to now get on the front foot and spell out what we think is a fair version of Brexit. Say what we are going to fight to the end to defend all of those rights that have supported people in the workplace, and not accept a kind of rhetoric that is going to be about dividing people one from another. You know, they could have done a really simple thing, Theresa May, in the aftermath of the referendum vote. She could have just said, in the hours after, that all EU nationals have the right to stay here. People who've come here, who've chosen to make their life here, who work in our NHS, who teach our children in our schools, people who've committed themselves to this country. She could have given them the status that they wanted. And instead, they've left it hanging. And that has created a hostile climate around our country. Children being told to go home in playgrounds. Rising hate crime on our streets. A politics of division again, where we pick a scapegoat and then we allow everybody to play along with that, going along with that narrative. It's wrong, colleagues, and we have to fight it, and we have to put forward what is a fair and right version of Brexit that protects all of the things that this party has fought for. But I'll say one final thing in terms of where we go from here, and it does touch now on my new responsibility as your candidate to be the first elected mayor of Greater Manchester. My message to you this week will be, let's embrace devolution in England fully. Let's put all of our weight behind it as a party. Let's put Labour's stamp on it. Let's make the Northern Powerhouse idea our own, because I think it is the answer to some of what we saw at the referendum. Why did so many Labour communities vote leave? There were complicated reasons. Immigration was one of them. But I think it was a deeper sense of abandonment and neglect by the political class. These are places that lost their industry in the 1980s and 1990s, that saw their house prices absolutely plummet. Whole streets built up by absent private landlords who've never visited ever since and carry on taking the money as those properties go downhill. These communities have been neglected, and that's how they feel. And that vote was their first chance to say, we're not having this anymore. And that's the point. I think Westminster has created a very unequal country. It's failed the north of England. It hasn't delivered the prosperity that other parts of the country take for granted. So I've made the decision that I'm ready to leave it, and I'm ready to put all of my energy into challenging it and rebalancing this country by making a success of devolution. And I want to do this and show that we can do things differently. And this is how I want to go about the role of mayor if I'm elected. I want to say, do you know, we're not going to make young people the target for cuts. We're going to prioritise them. And in Greater Manchester, we're going to show that if you do that, that's how you build a fairer and stronger society, where every child has a sense of hope at the end of school, where we don't have selection and some kids being written off. That is the way to build a stronger society. And you know, in housing, we don't just promote owner-occupation. We're going to build more council and social housing so everybody can have an affordable and decent home to live in. And we're not going to follow a Westminster policy when it was all about the knowledge economy, the service economy. What about manufacturing? What about industry? That's the policy that I'm going to promote in Greater Manchester. So we show that Labour will do things differently, and that is part of the fight back, colleagues, isn't it? If we win and then we show, as Sadiq is doing in London, that we're prepared to do things differently, that Labour in power can make a difference. And the last thing I'm going to do is bring social care out of the private sector and into the National Health Service. I don't accept that any older person or any disabled person or any adult with learning disabilities is worth just 15 minutes of somebody's time today. And I don't accept that the people who are out there giving that care are given no job security. They aren't even paid the minimum wage because they don't get the travel time between those 15-minute visits that they're asked to do. Conference and colleagues, we can do better than that as a Labour Party, can't we? We can do better. We can bring social care into the NHS, apply NHS values, and build a health service that has people at its heart. Those are going to be my priorities. That, I would say, is part of the fight back too. And I say to this party this week, get behind this change that's coming. Let's put our full weight behind it. Let's show the people of the north of England that they've got a voice through Labour again, that we are their party, we are their voice, and we are going to challenge this government for them, and we are going to make their lives better and fairer. Thanks very much for listening, colleagues.
I remember in 1992, some people in the Labour Party said it could never win again, and they were wrong, and Labour won 3 elections. I also remember in 2000, you'll have to pay for that. I also remember in 2007, in the summer of 2007, some Tories said Cameron would never win. Alas, they were wrong too, and he did.